Are you stuck? What about unhappy? Join Alena Chapman, author, mentor, and life coach for 30-minute moments as she challenges you to get out of the doldrum and start living your life to the fullest. It's time to celebrate that life with 30-minute moments.
Hello, everyone. This is 30-Minute Moments, and I'm Alena Chapman, your host. Hey, I love this guest. She is a friend, and I'm actually going to be speaking with her up in Toronto on the 22nd of June. So if you're in Toronto or want to be around Toronto, you might want to come see Authentic Leadership. Sorry about that. Authentic Leadership, because this is all about you, and it starts with you. Everything starts with you. So if you are authentic, imagine what you can get your company to be. You know what I mean? So with this, I want to introduce her. This is Roxanne Durhodge. All right. Now, she is the CEO of Authentic Connection Movement. She has over 25 years as a corporate consultant, along with being a psychotherapist. I'm very interested in hearing more about that connection. She is an Amazon bestseller and a subject matter expert on authentic leadership and how it impacts companies on the bottom line. So it does. It affects your results. So that's what she's here to talk about today. Hey there, Roxanne. How are you?
Good. How are you, Todd?
Oh, I'm doing fantastic. It's so great to have you on the show. Now,
well, thanks for having me.
Oh, you are so welcome. So when you were in all this, the leadership in the corporate world, now explain to me a little bit, because I'm not sure. With the psychotherapy, were you in, like, here in Indiana, we have the behavioral health, which is like a corporation. It's a bunch of doctors. Is that the kind of corporation you're talking about?
Well, I started as a frontline therapist with the Metro Toronto Police as a part of a trauma team.
Oh,
where
wow.
I actually did the therapy and continue to, throughout my career, to also be a psychotherapist. And then I went into corporate consulting not too long after getting into the field. So I actually saw patients. I have several specialties, from mental health, addictions, trauma, and couples and family therapy are some of the specialties that I have. But then I eventually went on to corporate consulting, where I worked with health and wellness strategies for different sectors of companies across Canada. For one of the biggest companies with health and wellness benefits is called employee assistance programs, and I did that for them for 12, and then with a smaller company for 10.
So in corporations, I mean, I've worked with women climbing up in the ladder with a lot of self-esteem, a lot of issues, a lot of being pushed down by either other women or the men, just pushing them down in how they treat them. In fact, I see it on a lot of fronts. What were you dealing with the corporation more?
Well, we would look at, the main thing for what we did as an executive was we looked at trends within every sector. So in healthcare, for instance, we would look at, obviously the demographic is mostly female. We would look at what things would keep people away from work, anything health-related. So it could be psychological, that could, or it could be nutrition, it could be childcare, it could be stresses within the environment. And what we would do is kind of look and say, this is the benchmark. A certain percentage of people would stay away from work, and these are the reasons that they would be staying away from work. So 65% of your female population is staying away from work because what we're finding is that they're having issues related to a work-life balance and childcare. And then the companies are able to strategize about solutions that would be able to enhance the capacity for people to not go off for long-term or short-term disability, but to be able to deal with what the issues are by the solutions that we would implement.
Now, I can't speak as far as, big corporations, although it would be nice if they honored that a little bit more. I do understand being a mom, a single mom who has her kids 24/7. that mom work thing, is a hard balance sometimes, especially when odd things come up. Like today, here I'm shooting a show and my son just got out of school early today. So there you go. There, if I was in a corporate world, I just would have to leave to pick up my son or make arrangements for that. I can understand women feeling that pull. So are we expecting women to be super women?
Well, I mean, what happens is women do the best they can, but what a conscious environment does is they will put solutions in. So our company offered a childcare, elder care expertise line where women that were struggling with that issue could actually call in and talk about strategies to kind of be able to manage those things even more. Work with, if let's say it's a shift work environment, obviously, we know that daycare facilities are generally, they might have some mostly day hours, but some evening. But if you have a night shift, that accommodation issue is a concern, right?
It is.
It just allows companies that are wanting to retain their talent to look at what kind of things could they implement, for women to assist them, whether it's an on-site daycare for evening hours and overnights, or to be able to see if you can kind of work around the issue that's presenting based on the the sector that you're working with. So
it's very interesting and it's good. I like it because it is hard to balance. And if a company, women are coming more and more out into the workforce. We really are. And in the next few years, it's going to grow even more. And is it because of necessity? Some, yes. But also there's some women are just not happy just staying home. I hate to tell you, I'm not one of those. I am one who always has to do more. I love my kids very much, but I need to fulfill my mission too at the same time. Doesn't make you less of a mom, but if you're working in a corporation, you do need them to understand that there is a life. Everyone has a life. A dad has a life, and it's important to accommodate that somewhat so that people can work. I think this is magnificent. Now, you're up in Toronto. We need to bring that even more down here. I know we have some, but I would love to bring even more.
Right. I think your benefits for even maternity leave is a lot shorter than ours.
What's yours?
I think it's about being progressive, right? We get a year off here, and I believe they just implemented a second year where they would hold your job for a second year, but they won't guarantee you the exact position. But they will guarantee you a job at the same level coming back into the workforce if you decided to take the second year without, I believe, maternity benefits, but they would secure your job should you come back after the 2 years to resume.
A year? They get a year to 2 years. That's amazing.
Yeah, when I had my son, which would be almost 18 years ago now, that had just gone into place, which is a year maternity benefit. I think what is it in the U.S.?
I think 6 months. It's about 6 months.
Okay, so it's come along even from what I remembered, but
it's not that long.
It's kind of looking at what is if you're really wanting to run to enhance people's life at work, it's about looking at your demographic. What are the external pressures of the industry? What are the internal pressures? What are the skill sets enhancements that are needed? If you're employing someone, how are your managers able to, ensure that they have the proper skills? Sometimes you hire people and they don't have the skills, and then the managers aren't so good at maybe kind of coaching to help them along with those skills. So it's a compilation of things, and it depends on the company really, based on how heightened they are in wanting to make their workplace as healthy as possible.
And, we're talking about big corporations, but it's also entrepreneurs, because entrepreneurs hire people. We forget that, we know that they have lives, but sometimes we treat the people like their life is as dedicated to the company as ours is because we own the company. And it's not the case. It's having that an understanding. I also want to talk, where did the authenticity come in as a leader? How does that help the situation?
Well, I think, what we know from the research is that the more authentically connected a leader is, obviously leaders have a lot on their mind. So, they get different levels of information about the organization. But the more aware a leader is of what's happening truly in an organization, and is able to kind of understand his or her kind of concept about how they manage when there's pressure points in the business or stressors or those types of things. I call it their leadership identity. What that allows the leader to be is become more conscious. So let's say I'm a leader and I'm the type that retracts when things get really stressful. I'm less visible. I communicate less, those types of things.
I withdraw. They withdraw. Yeah, they withdraw into themselves. Okay. So what does that do?
Right. And what that does is that, as it is, we know that when people get stressed, they need to feel connected to even more, right? Let's say you're going through a major acquisition or a merger. There's so much that has to happen when that occurs. So really, authenticity is about leadership, whether you're an entrepreneur or you're a CEO of a company. It's about being aware of, how do I react? How do I manage myself? How do I internally go inside, understand what's happening for me so that I can connect with the system or the people around me to ensure them that they know that I think it's going to be okay, even if I don't know if it's going to be okay, that I can support them in a way that allows them to continue functioning. So it becomes a ripple effect from the top down.
It does.
And people take their lead, obviously, from, how the leader is tending to things. And if the leader kind of, if it becomes more, if he or she becomes more insular and less connected, then that trickles down to the C-suite. It throughout the C-suite, then the board, and then literally towards kind of the management levels. And middle management oftentimes is the one that gets stuck a lot of times with managing the front line, and they might feel unsupported if they don't kind of get the support that they need from upper management.
And, because in a corporation you have all those levels as an entrepreneur, if you find that you are someone who retreats or you find that sometimes it's hard to change your nature. But if you're authentic with yourself and you're going to withdraw when it gets really busy in the store, you're going to withdraw, then you can set up systems and you can let your team know so that the team understands where you are.
If we look at it, authentic leadership is based on, about how do we attach to ourselves? Like all of us have a story, right?
Don't we?
And and it's if you look at a lot of what I talk about is based on Bowen's theory of structural family therapy, and most of us have an identity based on what we were exposed to. Kind of the early years. A lot of people say, well, how does that affect my leadership? But in a way, we kind of have a view of the world. We have a subset of how we believe the world is. We have a subset about our values based on kind of the certainty or lack of certainty that we may have been exposed to. Then we interact with the world that way.
Right.
At the end of the day, as a leader, whether you're an entrepreneur or a CEO, you're still a person. I think it's knowing yourself, kind of, how do I react, and what do people need from me in this position of power to be able to kind of allay their fears? Because most people, we're all into kind of what's happening for us, right? What's happening around my world. And the more that the leader or the entrepreneur can be authentic within themselves, understand their limitations, like you said, and set up systems accordingly to ensure that others around them are taken care of, then I think, then you're kind of living within that authenticity.
You are listening to 30-Minute Moments, and I'm your host, Alena Chapman, and we are talking to Roxanne Durhaj.
You're listening to 30-Minute Moments with Alena Chapman, helping you discover your true purpose on WOWO and at WOWO.com.
Welcome back to 30-Minute Moments. And we are talking to a psychotherapist all about authentic leadership. So whether you're in entrepreneurism or corporate, this is cool. And her name is Roxanne Durhaj. And Roxanne, I wanted to bring us back into this because you touched on something in the previous section about our belief system, that old belief system. It crops up everywhere in our life, but it crops up in our leadership qualities. So those things that we learned from years 1 to 8, maybe.
Well, what we know is that when we if you think of your primary or early years, whoever that primary figure was or figures, they kind of created a space for us to either feel very, very consistent and safe. And I often say, and we call that secure attachment, right, or secure attachment identity. So the person is allowed to kind of just evolve into who they need to be. Like I often say, whoever you need to be in that environment, you just blossom into who you need to be. And then in turn, you kind of can listen internally, psychologically, emotionally, spiritually to who you are. Not everybody had that. I would say that most people didn't have that ideal upbringing. And what happens is then when, let's say you had a parent or a figure that was kind of avoidant, then you kind of learn that, okay, well, I have needs now, but the person I need it from may or may not be available. So I kind of that kind of gives me a bit of hesitance that would develop in kind of how I develop as a person.
Okay. Sometimes
I believe that people will be there. Sometimes I believe like, whoa, what happened there? So I learned that maybe I can't trust or rely on people 100%. A lot of times when that occurs, it becomes kind of, I'm uncertain then, right? Like I often say it's like home base, right? Home base really never changes. It stays constant.
Right.
And that's ideally what we want in leadership is that even though you may not have been brought up in that kind of ideal environment, that doesn't mean that 0 to 7 means you're fixed. Because it may be the pattern that you may have been exposed to early, but we can still develop into that a consistent home base for ourselves by work we could do internally as entrepreneurs or leaders so that others around us can benefit from kind of the consciousness about what home base is like for them. Because if we're grounded and secure, we're able to look outside of ourselves and not get absorbed internally in what's happening with us.
You know, what do you think about, say a person has like a trust issue and they're trying to be an effective leader, but this feeling of, well, I can rely on people, but I can't. And they have a trust issue. Now that can cause a problem with their employees because there is a lack of trust. So if you know that, first you have to say, okay, I've got a little bit of a trust issue for whatever reason. And you do have to do the internal, but you don't have to stay with that trust issue. Like you said, you have to go in and say, all right, I've got this issue. What do I want to do about it? And then you can take the steps. Yeah. You're not, I don't want to say, so you have something that happens in your life. I have a group of, actually, they're all men in this group. It's so funny. I do all these women groups, but now I have an all men's group. And they come, and it's amazing to me how they are. Their childhood is affecting so much of their life right now with their relationships, with their career choices. They can't separate it.
Absolutely, and I see it all the time, whether I'm coaching or, in my practice, when I see individuals, that's what ends up happening, right? Because it's kind of like anything else. If you shut it off, right? If you don't allow it to flow through you, it becomes bottlenecked. And it's like, I always say it's like the steam in the teapot. You might create a phenomenal life, in all the other areas, but sometimes that emotional part still pops back up because the teapot blows. So it's about my statement that I often use is honor it. It happened. Bear it. Let it go and put it into context in the present. And the more you're able to do that, then you're in control. Right, because things are going to happen. People are going to trigger you. Maybe you had a mom that raised her voice all the time, so maybe when you run into a female executive that does the same, you react to her quickly because the brain does that in a very adaptive way, a quick way to protect you. Mm-hmm. And what happens is you get repelled back really, really quickly into the past, and you may be reacting to her based on the past, not the present, by your overreactivity. So again, that internal work to be able to look at when someone triggers you, whether it's your VA or your board or someone, you kind of say, okay, what happened there? What truly happened is my reaction was a little bit over the top, but that wasn't warranted based on this individual. So what happened here? What can I do about it next time? And what strategies can I use as a leader to bring myself present to the fact that we're talking about XYZ in the business right now?
And the most important thing is you don't punish yourself for it because it's not going to do any good. You know what I mean?
No,
you don't beat yourself up about it. You just know that that's something you have to register. And I even had that happen with someone. There was something in my corporation. There's one person who can always trigger me. And I was in a meeting. This happened to me. I'm not perfect. And she said that one thing again. And I blew. I blew. And I haven't blown in, I say, 7 years, honest to God. And here I just blew up at her a little. And then I felt bad. But then I thought, it needed to come out, but probably not in that order. I did apologize to her. But then I had to look at myself and say, hey, what is it about her that triggers me? Why am I allowing that to happen? And how can I not?
People that trigger us.
Oh, there are always people that trigger us. Yeah. We're not all alike. It's a world, and we have to learn. But it's up to us to figure out how do I deal with this person, or how can I have a better relationship with this person? How do I not let them trigger me? Or really, I've got to stop myself from getting triggered. It's up to me. They're not doing it. I don't think you can
stop people triggering you. All you can become more heightened to understanding what those triggers are. And we all have hot points, right?
We do.
Of things for whatever reason. And I think the more you become aware of that, what we call it is dual processing. So something happens in the present. I get triggered. It repels me back like kind of quickly. And then I can say, here we go. That just happened. Okay, what do I need to do now? Because, I'm about to do a major presentation in front of 100 people kind of thing, or 1,000 people.
Right.
What do I need to bring myself to the present, back into my senses, and stay present? Because really that's all I have right now. It becomes a skill that gets a lot easier as you practice it.
You have to practice
over
it
again.
That's perfect.
Yes.
You are listening to 30-Minute Moments, and I'm Alena Chapman, and we are talking to Dr. Roxanne Derhodge.
This is 30-Minute Moments with Alena Chapman, helping you find your inner self every Sunday on WOWO and at WOWO.com.
Do you feel trapped, fresh out of hope? Or are you living a life you don't want anymore? Break Free with the Prison Effect, the latest book written by your host, Alena Chapman. You can text the word BOOK to 46862 to win a copy of the international bestseller. That's BOOK to 46862 to win an autographed copy of The Prison Effect. It's time to break free.
Welcome back to 30-Minute Moments. And I'm Alena Chapman, your host. And we are doing the shift. I do love this. I'm going to have to make up a song, guys, because I just love this part so much. But anyway, we're talking to Dr. Roxanne Derhodge. Okay, Roxanne, it's your moment. It's your story. It's the shift. What was your aha moment and got you where you want to be right now?
Well, I think, for me, I grew up in a little island of Trinidad and Tobago, and I saw a bit of uncertainty in my primary family. So I decided at age 11 I wanted to help others. And because I recognized that I thought, there were times that I needed help and there wasn't the right or appropriate help to be able to be gotten. So that's why I decided that I wanted to become a psychologist. And I realized in the world, right, that, the difference between people, resiliency and people being in pain is the difference of being able to shift, right, to go from one space to another. We've all had things happen, in our lives, Elena. But it's what we do with it that makes a difference between someone that's resilient versus someone that's not. So that's kind of how I picked the field that I did, to be able to go on and become a psychotherapist. And 7 years ago, I also made another shift, and that's when, after 25 years of marriage, I ended my marriage. My corporate consulting job had ended after quite a long time, and I finally stopped. So I decided, what can I do to give back to the world at that time? Because I wanted to not just touch people one-to-one anymore. I wanted to be able to talk to a bigger crowd. I figure, if I talk to more people about the capacity that you are not defined by what you come from or what you've experienced, What I did is I analyzed my own life based on some of the traumas that I had seen and carried the readers through the same so that they could analyze their own relationships and decide, I call it the good, the bad, and the ugly. What's good, what's bad, and what's ugly, what you got to get rid of immediately. And I actually worked them through the steps on how they can do that, like I would do anyone behind closed doors. And then I started to speak and train and coach on that model so that I could touch more lives based on the concept.
I love it. I love it. Two major shifts. You had a marriage that was failing and a job that you just lost. That's, all you needed to do was move. And then you'd have the three worst things. Okay. So let's go back there. Now, you are seeing all this disaster fall around you. Okay, we are either resilient or we give in to it. So,
Right.
how did you change? It's a perception change. That's what you're doing. How did you shift your perception change?
Well, I knew that the uncertainty I saw with my parents' marriage, I didn't want.
Okay.
And what I was feeling emotionally in my present marriage, it started to feel the same, even though it was not the same.
Okay.
So I started to listen to, why am I feeling so empty on the inside? The values that I was looking for long term, just having a young son, it wasn't bearing through. My beliefs about what relationships should be like, that was the one period in my life that was, not happy. The other parts of my life, I had created a pretty nice life. But again, like I often say, the teapot, that's the one part where the top of the pot blew. And in slowing down, what it allowed me or forced me to do is to really accept that the reality was that what I was hoping to achieve in this relationship was short-sighted. I met him at 18. I was then 44 years old, and I was hoping that things would shift so the marriage could be enhancing and meet the needs of the marriage and the family. And it wasn't occurring. So I think it was just listening to what was happening to me internally, and I talk a lot about that in the book. It wasn't as bad as my parents. So you can't just end this. It's 25 years. He comes from a good family. All those things.
We all hear that. Yeah.
And then finally I said, okay, let's face facts. Things aren't getting better. They've been getting worse. And I slowly started to kind of say, this needs to change. And if it does not change, I need to make the change. And that's when I decided the marriage.
Responsibility, perception and responsibility. Very, very cool. Okay. Now, why don't you tell everyone the title of your book?
The title of my book is called A Therapist Insider's Guide on Relationships.
Ooh, I like that. That's very nice. And how do people find out more about you?
They go to my website, which is roxannederhodge.com. It's spelled Roxannederhodge.com.
Perfect. Now, I don't want to. I love what we're talking about, but you have an event, my dear, in Toronto.
You have an event in Toronto, and of which you are gracious enough to come and speak on stage with myself.
Yes.
And Mr. Brian Cuban, who will be sharing his story about his mental health and addiction. I'm going to be talking about all the things that leaders could do to be preventative to take care of people's mental well-being. You're going to be talking about actual strategies about how to shift the mindset. How do you become successful? And CEO Space is going to be doing a super networking event where you tap into the soul connection of authenticity.
Well, everyone, this has been an awesome show. So it's time for you to be an authentic leader in every part of your life. Most of all, listen again. Next week, we are going to have a fabulous guest that we're just talking about all sorts of things with leadership and your health and just betterment of life. So make sure you tune in. Again, this is 30-Minute Moments. Have a fabulous week.
This has been 30-Minute Moments featuring Alena Chapman. If you missed an episode, download it now at wowo.com.
Podcasts by Federated Media.